And am I a co-host?
No.
Yeah. Oh, Diana's. Make me a co-host because I want to show you something.
Welcome everybody to our Magnification Call for December 13th. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am excited to turn the time over to Mr. Richard Paul Evans.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. This has been a kind of strange day. I had this COVID scare. I actually slept for 8 hours and my chest hurt. I thought, man, am I sick? And Carrie just got her test back negative. We've had 5. My daughter Abby has COVID. She left us and then found out 2 days later she has COVID. So we were all exposed, and so everyone did tests except for me, and they all came back negative. So I guess I was paying for that today when I just stayed in bed all day. So I actually literally got up 2 hours ago. It feels very weird today. I did get up to see the cat, which was great. The cat moment, I tried to film it, but I didn't get a very good video. So I want to show you something. Do you remember last week we were talking about the bunker mentality and the power of gratitude? You're going to love this. I'm going to show you a chart. I've taken the numbers off for obvious reasons, but I want to show you what's happened with donations to the Christmas Box House. So on Saturday, I went and did a radio show. And at the end of it, the man said, so tell me about the Christmas Box House. And I said, I'd love to. And I told him about the work we were doing. And he said, well, we did a little fundraiser for you. And he gave us a check for more than $7,000. And it's like, this is the way it's been going. So this is, now bear in mind, when you see the number on the right-hand side, you'll see a little bump on the left side. Well, I'll show it. Let me just show it to you and then you'll get it. Okay, this is last December. This is this December. So far, we're not even halfway through the month. This is as of yesterday. Compare. Compare what's happening there. That doesn't include in-kind donations, which are literally probably 4 times this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take this off. Okay. Anyway, does that look like things are going downhill? Yeah, this is the reality, that instead of just fearing the storm and weathering the storm, we actually leaned into it and found that it opened tremendous opportunities. And the relationships we're building, which is why I was with Chuck Baker there, is that we realize that we're just moving on to the future. And so now we're setting our goals and our dreams much larger. But the graph is important because it actually shows, it's kind of like checking your pulse. The most fun we have is actually going down to the Christmas Box House. If you just go down there, you will see this flow of traffic of people coming in, carrying things in, donating things, giving, and you'll just watch it happen. It's really incredibly beautiful. It's become a really wonderful dream, which is what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about dreams. You've all heard me give the quote from Henry David Thoreau that the massive men live lives of quiet desperation. What does desperation mean? Raise your hand. When he says the massive men live lives of quiet desperation, what does that mean? Joseph, go ahead and unmute.
When I think of desperation, I think of people doing things that, number one, are not the best for them, and number two, that they don't even feel like led or guided to do it. It's just when we're thinking desperate, we don't think clearly. We're living almost in a consistent state of panic. It's like being in a room that's on fire, and then putting out all the tiny little fires instead of actually focusing on what you want to, because you don't want to die.
I like that you used the word panic. Janica? Hi.
I'd like to make something up, right? So it might be not made up. I might be telling the truth, but despair, to be apart from, to separate, And that's what desperation is. It's separating yourself instead of engaging.
You were being creative. I like that. So separating ourselves from the situation, separating from
Our feelings, from other people, where it's just, that's what desperation is. We don't feel like we have power over things. We feel like we can't touch it.
perfect. Exactly. And I'm looking at Jay and Linda Walter there, and they came by our house last night. Sorry to give you the COVID scare. We told you, we warned you when you came in. They're feeling despair and right now because of that. This is the definition. Desperation is a loss of hope and surrender to despair. So Janica, you're right on. Okay, a loss of hope, surrender to despair, and second, a state of hopelessness leading to rashness. You've heard the saying, desperate times require desperate measures, right? But I think, Joseph, I think you nailed it. Thank you so much for your contributions, because you both hit very important parts of this. I think panic is a good word. Are people at their best when they panic? Are they making good decisions? Are they smart? Okay, so let's talk about right now. Are we in a time of desperation? What do you think? Would you say America's in a time of desperation? A lot of it, not everyone, a lot. There's a lot of hopelessness, some of it leading to rashness. And there's some people who want to surrender to despair because of that loss of hope. And so when Henry David Thoreau said that the mass of men live lives of quiet desperation, kind of a quiet panic. That's why that quote I think was so powerful. There's this kind of it's a kind of a irony, but like deep inside we hide it. You know, we look like we're in control and charge, but inside we're like freaking out. Does anyone know anyone like that right now? Okay, yeah. Okay, so what I was been exploring and wanted to share with you today is the idea of hope, and in combination with our dreams. What I guess the challenge of hope is like, well, hope in what? I mean, if you're hoping for the destruction of mankind, this would be a really great time, maybe. Okay, if your hope is in darkness, this is like having fun. There are people that are looking forward to the zombie apocalypse. It's like, okay, so the question is, what is your hope in? And if you have hope in things that are unrealistic completely, then you're gonna have a problem. You can always live in a state of despair because you're gonna have to give up on that hope at some time. This is the beauty of the 5 kingdoms, because it gives us a sense of where our hope should be, doesn't it? And if you vary from that, if you put your hope in kingdom 5, okay, you're going to have trouble. I know 2 people who put their hope in kingdom 2. They thought marriage would bring them all the joy and happiness they could imagine, and it brought them complete despair. They married someone who wasn't who they thought they had married. They were a very different person. And here they are clinging, they're basically riding the wrong train somewhere. Could you imagine the panic you would feel? Have you ever gotten on the plane and gone to the wrong place? And they're like shutting the door. And it's like, wait, I'm not going there. Have you ever seen that guy, the guy that they comes running off the plane just before they shut the door? It's like, I'm not going to San Diego. Okay, I don't know how they get through, but every now and then that happens. They usually try to weed them out first. Okay, it's that sense of panic. It's like, wait, I'm not going here. This is the kind of life we're set up if we're not putting our hope in the correct things. Now, I do have something that I have a favor to ask of all of you. Do you all have my email? And Diane, would you type my email? Ben Hardy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who we did sign a deal together with Hay House, the publisher, the major publisher. They will be publishing the 5 Kingdoms book next September. Okay. Ben is flying in town. He's here tomorrow morning. We are locking our way in a hotel for a week. Diane, I need you to book that tonight, please. we'll talk later about. I'm picking him up in the morning. We're going up and we're locking ourselves away. I would like your insight in the 5 kingdoms. What has been your biggest epiphany, especially if you were living without a paradigm before? Okay, if you didn't understand this concept and so you were floating like the mass of humanity, those are really good stories. So I would really love, we're looking for stories to put in our book. And so would love, it doesn't need to be long, but we do want to hear about profound stories of effect that it's had in your life. So would you please, if you could please do that even tonight before you go to bed and send them, or tomorrow morning and send them to my email. And then I'll have that up as we sit down and start brainstorming on how everything's going. Thank you very much. So it's a big week for the 5 kingdoms. So when we talk about hopelessness, I think there's a real connection with, well, what do we hope for? And sometimes we think about our hopes are really our dreams. Is that fair enough to say? We use the word almost interchangeably. What are my dreams? What are my hopes? Is that fair enough to say? You know, I had a dream, but it was also a hope when I was young that I wouldn't have the same life as an adult that I had as a kid. Okay, I have seen people who have risen above these horrible circumstances, much worse than mine, to have good and powerful lives and have succeeded in big ways. And because they had this hope, they had this dream that life could be more than what they were living. And the beautiful irony of that is that in many cases, it was actually the pain they suffered that was the fuel to get them to the new life. So let's talk about dreams. I came up with this concept that there are really 6 reasons why we don't achieve our dreams. What I'd like you to do tonight is actually, as you write them down, decide which one is you. What is it that's keeping you from what you want? Okay, because they're very different. People respond in different ways, but what is it that's really keeping you from your hope, from something that will bring you tremendous joy? So let's begin. First of all, the first reason that people don't reach their dreams is they don't have dreams. They just don't have one. They have stopped thinking, they have stopped looking, they have stopped feeling, sometimes for good reasons. Sometimes they have lost these feelings because they have been just slammed down so many times. Does this feel like you? Why bother? I'm just going to fail. Okay, so that's the biggest reason. That's the first reason, because if you don't have a dream, there's no way you're going to reach your dreams. So I run into this all the time. People just stop dreaming. And this comes from a loss of faith that it's not going to happen. So how do we deal with that? If this is you, if you're number 1, you don't have dreams at all. Okay, so the way to deal with this, and I would be happy to hear from any of you that have successfully navigated this, the way I see is actually in the power of imagination and daydreaming. Okay, to actually spend the time, to actually put away time and say, I'm going to sit here and just daydream about something. And then to actually start to create change in your life from that daydream. And let's say it's something simple. I mean, when I teach the 5 lessons for my, A Millionaire Taught Me, I talk about this nest egg. This is the whole point of this, why we have them collect a little nest egg in a glass jar. And I say, put your change in there, because it is a tangible change. It's a psychological hack. Okay, so let's say you have a dream. And like Jay and Linda here, they have a dream to go to Germany for the Passion Play, is that right? Yeah, what a cool dream. And I've talked to Jay because Carrie and I have the same dream. We're going to go too. And they were going to go this year and it got shut down because of COVID, but it didn't end their dream. They're still planning on going. Is that right? Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about your dream, Jay?
Well, I've always wanted to go back to Germany and Switzerland. My ancestors are from that area. And we have several people. One of the brothers in our ward was mission president in Germany, and several people that have served in Germany, and talking to them. And I just wanted to go on a river cruise and see some of the castles and see the area. And they talked about this Oberammergau, the Passion Play. And I thought, okay, that is a good reason to go see this. And it actually kind of was kicked off. I was talking to Ben Hardy, and he says, you know, what's your big goal? Where do you want to go this year? You want to travel? What's your big goal? And I said, I want to go to Germany. And he said, well, it's time to put some skin in the game and put money down on plane tickets. And so that really solidified that dream in my mind. Was, you know, I put skin in the game, and that took us to the next step, and the finding the tour and finding the things we wanted to do. And
So the thing that I heard you say to start with is you started this dream because you had a desire.
yes,
So it starts with desire. Do you think people get to the point where they stop having desires?
yeah.
Possible? Does anyone have a comment on that? Janica, go ahead.
What I've noticed is we stop having desires when we've tried a few times and have been unsuccessful, and the desire turns into despair because we've had disappointment so often. So really and truly overcoming that and continuing to hope in spite of consistent disappointment is the real challenge.
Disappointment turns desire into despair. Okay. Yeah, I think sometimes there's dreams that that might be not, and they might not be the right dream right now. I certainly have a lot more failures than I have successes, but I view myself as a successful person. So why would I do that when I have so many failures? Well, because the failures don't count. That's the beautiful thing. Failures are just our stepping stones. So if you're to get back into the place of dreams, it can be something very, very simple. And to start off with a dream, but the bottom line is it has to be a desire. And so I love it that Jay and Linda had this desire to go to Germany. The desire doesn't have to be rational. It doesn't have to have any reason. This is the beauty of who you are. The desire just has to be something you want. That makes it worthy right there. Okay, that alone makes it worthy. So, okay, so the first reason is that what keeps them from the people from the dreams, they don't have dreams. Okay, if this is you, this is your assignment for 2021 is to get a freaking dream. Okay. Okay, the second, this one makes me sad. People don't feel worthy of a dream. I'm not sure why we get this. Sometimes I see it's religious based, that if someone's in a legalistic religion, they think, well, if I'm not good enough, I can't have this. It really makes no sense, but it's really sad when I run into someone who says, I'm not worthy for it. And I'm not sure what actually creates that. But I run into it enough. Does anyone relate to this? They don't feel worthy of a dream. Hi. Any comments? Ruth, were you raising your hand?
So, well, sort of. I used to make Christmas ornaments. I started, about 35 years ago. I used to make Christmas ornaments. And I married my husband with 7 children. And a few years afterwards, I was sick. They thought I had MS, and I got better, and I'm doing really well now. But my energy level got really, really slow, and my stepkids really didn't appreciate my ornaments. And it sort of killed that dream. And with the low energy and with me not feeling well and me having to conserve all my energy, to try to not overdo, I let it go. I let that dream go of making ornaments every year, and I stopped. And so it's,
And how did that impact you?
it sort of took that beautiful feeling I had for Christmas every year away. I mean, I wound up making like 120 ornaments by time. I used to just make them for my nieces and nephews, and then I had to make them for my siblings, and then I had to make them for so and so, and it got up to like 120 ornaments, and they were anywhere from 50 cents to $1.50 to make, so $2 at the most to make them, but it was sometimes very time consuming, and it was a joy to make them. And it just took that nice little feeling of Christmas out. Does that make sense?
It does. And so, we'll talk about that later. Because there's another part of that, because you lost something special because as someone else's choice.
Yeah.
It's someone else's
And,
response, but
and
there's
it was,
but you have to take responsibility for that. And I'll tell you
oh,
why
I
you do
did.
that.
Yes. You know
So-
what? And it doesn't take away my joy for Christmas anymore. I still find other ways to celebrate, but it's just part of that feeling of, having a dream and losing it, and I know it was my decision to not do that anymore, but my energy level is important, and for me not to overdo at Christmas or not to do earlier in the year.
Okay.
I mean, I could make that dream happen now, especially with the Kingdom Organizer and getting my life more organized. It's a lot easier to master something like that. But
Thank
it's
you.
no
There's
longer.
there's a couple different areas we're going to talk about that. So thank
You
you for
bet.
sharing that. Suzanne Halfville wrote about a bad childhood leads to this. Suzanne, would you like to talk on that? How bad childhood leads to feeling of unworthiness? Is she there? Okay, she's not there. It's on. She's on, but
Hello.
oh, there you go. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi. Yeah, I think that a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of adults make you feel like you're not worthy, especially like, oh, they're just a child. What they're saying doesn't matter. And then nobody's going to believe them about whatever trauma you've suffered. So that kind of creates you don't feel worthy as an adult.
I think you nailed it completely, Suzanne. In fact, I think you answered my question when I said I don't know why people do that. It is learned. Have you noticed children don't really have that when they're really small? They pretty much they pretty much feel they're very important.
And I love that about little kids, but a lot of adults, they take that away from them. And I have this saying, like, I don't care if you're 5 years old or 50 years old, what you're saying to me, I need to respect and hear you and listen to you. And a lot of adults don't do that.
And Suzanne, sometimes people even wrap that in almost a religious setting. I mean, I watched my granddaughter Nora. One day she walked into the house and said, "I'm here."
Oh.
And it's like, you know what? She's like, it's like, okay. It's like, here I am. You are so lucky. Isn't that wonderful?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it is.
I love that too. And it's like, so all of us, I mean, to have that sense, you walk in, it's like, I'm here. I remember saying something to my mom. It's like, I can do this. I was looking at a piece of art. I can do this. And she got mad at me. She said, "You are not being humble." Okay. And it wasn't a sense of, a sense of I was trying to boast. It was a sense of me just looking at something objectively and saying, I think I have the talent to do that. And the reality is my mom was responding from her generations and how she had 12 siblings who just beat the crap out of her dreams. They told her, "You can't do that." They told her. "Why do you think you're special?" And the truth is, people, Stephen King in his book on writing, did this really cool story about this girl who was really picked on, and she became the basis for his book, Carrie, right? A really scary story, but there was this girl that everyone picked on. And then one summer she went home and something happened. Her parents got some money. They bought her a new sweater. She never had new clothes. So she found something, they did her hair, and she came to school and she looked pretty. And the crabs in the crab pot attacked her. It was like someone had made a run for it and they dragged her down. It's like, no, you don't go above us. And eventually the hair went back to the way it was. The sweater got old, and pretty soon she was the person she was, because people are terrified of someone leaving them behind. I remember reading a story about this woman who lost almost 400 pounds. And she said her why was she started to drive her kids to school, and they asked if she would drop, the kids say, could you drop us off a block away? Because they didn't want anyone to see their mother, because they were being made fun of, because your mother's such a fat thing, right? They were making all, kids, it can be really cruel. And that's why they didn't want anyone to see their mother. And so she started to lose weight, and she lost 400 pounds. But guess what her husband started to do? Talk about passive aggressive. He started to bring home boxes of donuts every night. Now, why wouldn't he want his wife to lose weight? Well, because he was heavy. He didn't want her to leave him behind. Her success cast a light on his failure. Her strength showed his weakness. So he tries to stop her. Okay, this is a sense of people trying to make people feel unworthy. And that was the case of my mom. It wasn't about being a good boy. It wasn't about being Christ-like. Jesus was very clear. I can do that. I can heal them. It wasn't boasting if you can do it. You know what I mean? It's like he was very clear. But people like to take their insecurities and their weaknesses and wrap them up in higher packaging. Well, I'm being humble. No, you're not. You're being weak. You're putting a bushel over your candle is what you're doing. And that's where my mom was coming from. Okay. You're not worthy to have that. Well, who is worthy to have it? It's a non sequitur. Success has nothing to do with worthiness, if you're talking in a moral sense. Okay. Separate it. And you see you see that all the time. Well, I'm wealthy because God loves me. Really? So he really loves Bill Gates a whole lot, and Warren Buffett, his favorite people in the world, right there. Right? It doesn't make sense. Rationally, we know it doesn't make sense. Okay, but this is a really sad one. If this is you, how do you deal with it? The biggest thing you have to do is recognize it. That you are saying you're not worthy. And track it down. Where did that come from? And then just disconnect it. Your dreams and worthiness have nothing to do with each other. Disconnect it. In fact, if you actually shine the light on that, it'll run like cockroaches, because there's no logic behind that. Okay, there's no logic that underpins that. Okay, the third, they bind themselves to past events. Okay, they bind themselves to past events. It's like, well, I failed back then, so I will fail again. Is this the reason you don't pursue your dreams or reach your dreams? Because something didn't work in the past. Part of this is paradigm. And I remember when I first wrote the Christmas box, and that paradigm started to kick in. Well, no one from Salt Lake was famous for writing. There wasn't a single famous Salt Lake writer. It's like, I can't do this, because it doesn't, the past says this doesn't exist. And my business partner said something extremely wise that changed my paradigm in 1 minute. He said, Well, where do bestseller authors come from? Isn't it about time one came from Salt Lake City? Interesting, huh? Isn't it about time one came from Salt Lake City? Think about that. Isn't it about time one came from your house? Where does everyone come from? Does anyone know where Brad Pitt came from? You kind of think of these people come from like really small towns. It's like, okay, it's getting out of this paradigm. I asked my wife something tonight. I had this moment of appreciation from my father-in-law, and he passed away about 10 years ago. I would love to ask him this. My father-in-law was a tough little Italian immigrant. Actually, his father was. His father taught himself English from a dictionary, and he worked in the Kennecott copper mines. So think about it. These Italian immigrants working in mines. Everything you see in the movies, it's just like that. My question is, how did he get out? He has a brother who looks just like him. And as he said, we lived on the west side of the west side. The poor people looked down on us. He lived so far. He lived right by the mines. If you've ever tasted water from Magna, there's a good reason to drink beer. Okay, it is hideous. It is hideous. And anyway, he was just like this tough little guy moving in a little Italian gang, short guy. He worked his way up to be an executive at Kennecott. He moved to the east side of Salt Lake City. Had he not, I never would have met Carrie. It's interesting. It had a consequence. He went from working with the unions and being heavily involved with the unions to actually being the union negotiator for Kennecott. Think about that switch. Did people see him as a traitor? He had 2 double bypass surgeries before he retired. He was getting constant death threats every time business would downturn. Okay. He had to carry a gun with him. He was constantly having his life threatened. Also, he had a sibling who looked just like him who didn't speak to him for almost 15 years. When I met him, it was really weird because he looks just like my father-in-law and sounds like him. But they resented him. The family resented him for leaving Magna, right? It's the same story of the crab pot. One of the crabs started to get out, and they tried to pull him back in, and he wouldn't do it. He was working, he would work hard all day, and then he would go to school. He got his college degree and his master's at night. Okay, he made a dream. And my question was, I asked Carrie, why? Why was he so different? What was so, I mean, he was still, a hard drinking, deer hunting guy from the West Side. He never lost that kind of identity, but he was an executive. It's like, why did he get through? And I asked her, why do you think it was? Because the only clue I ever got was his family. And it's the only thing I ever heard, because he didn't talk about himself very much. And all the pictures when he's in graduations and things, his graduation cap's always like on Carrie or, one of his daughters. And when they were deciding where to live, it was always about where their daughters would go to school. It almost seems like this man who didn't seem like he had a lot of love. He was a pretty tough guy. And I knew it because he hated me when I first started dating Carrie. He tried to push me out. In fact, he just told me to let me. When I told him that we were engaged, he goes, I didn't raise her for 22 years to be taken by some poor Mormon boy. He goes, you better not keep her barefoot and pregnant. Right? When I took him in our $2.5 million home we were building, walked through it, it's like, what do you think, Larry? Barefoot and pregnant? It's like, oh, shut up. The jury was out. You done well, Rick. But he went past that. He pushed out of this. And it wasn't, people will get angry when they see them move, just like that, just like the guy with the 500-pound wife. He was angry. She can get out of bed, she's going to leave him behind. So how do we disconnect ourselves from the past? This is what I teach when I teach paradigm. Same thing. It's the power of daydreaming. And it's the seeing past. That's why books are important. But seeing something big, I love it when, something like, Jane Linda saying, we want to go to Germany. and having never been to Germany. Or someone just has a dream. I want to see the backcountry, what is it, in Australia. I want, sometimes people just get these little things in their mind, and I love it because what happens is it has a ripple effect. And when people go on these little excursions, it's not a one-time deal. It changes the way they see the world because they realize if I can accomplish this, I can accomplish this. And if you look at people who really are high achieving, look at Elon Musk. The dude wants to colonize Mars. Okay, is this like the most beautiful dream this guy has? I mean, he is a dream machine. And is my world better because of Elon Musk? Yeah, it is. Are there people that take shots at Elon Musk? Of course there are. And I always just think, man, what a bunch of jealous fools. We need our Elon Musks and Steve Jobs, and we need these geniuses to come out who are willing to dream. You're not going to get there by taking the same old roads to a new place. The old roads don't suddenly change destination. So you've got to change those roads, which means you might have to do something you've never done before. I was up till past midnight talking to Michael about this the other night. Michael is branching out and saying, what do I really want to do? And he goes, I think I might like forensics, criminal forensics, or maybe I'd like to be in intelligence or spy. It's like, cool. You talk to my brother, he's a spy. That shared knowledge, that imagination, the what if gets really powerful. That's how we break from the past. But you need to make that break. You know what Ben told Jay about putting the money down? You got to put the money down. Okay, you got to do some symbolic act that moves you past something that you haven't done before. You will never do something new if you never do something new. That sounds like dumb, right? But I'll never become an author if I don't write a book. It's that simple. You do something new with your life. So you find that. Okay.
Can I share?
Please,
share
yes.
a story about that? So 3 years ago, there had been this girl that I was kind of sort of pursuing overseas in London. And so I finally decided that I was just going to go see her. Now I was broke. I didn't have any money. And I just decided I was going to do it. And I started telling people that I was going to do it. And then I planned a day, and then everything just fell into place. And I had a client that owed me thousands of dollars that they said they'd pay me, and they still hadn't before I left for London. This was like 3 or 4 weeks after I made the decision, and everything just came together perfectly. I mean, it didn't go well, but I had a good time in London for the most part. But it was just amazing how, like, once I said, hey, this is what I'm doing, everything came through. And I think that's really how Heavenly Father works with us. Like he basically says, hey, like you know what you want. I actually had some other really cool thing happen this Saturday of just, I was praying, I was figuring out how to get these goals done this year. And Heavenly Father just kind of laid it out for me. Is like, I had 2 songs that I needed to learn on guitar. And he just said, hey, why don't you pick up this song that you've had downloaded for 8 years that you never learned, called Disarm by Smashing Pumpkins, which I find really funny and ironic. And then Learning to Fly by Tom Petty, and I'd learned them in 35 minutes, and I'd accomplished my goal for the year. And so, I mean, I think it's just really cool when we set ourselves and we say, this is what I want to do, then everything just comes together.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And fate favors the bold. I believe that. When you put it out there, I think the universe does work with you. The problem is the universe knows the path and you don't. And sometimes it's going to pull you over. And we'll get to that in just a minute. So number 4, the fear of taking risks. What does risk mean? Well, risk is the chance or probability that a person will be harmed or experience an adverse health effect if exposed to a hazard. Here's a better definition of risk, I think. A situation involving exposure to a hazard or danger. What's the danger? What's danger? Carol Burns. What's danger to you? Oh, you're still muted. There you go.
right now, to me, everything is danger with this COVID. No matter what you do, you're at risk because of COVID. I haven't seen my grandchildren for a year because of COVID.
I'm glad you
And
brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up. So let's talk about, okay, let's talk about COVID. Let's talk about danger. Let's talk about putting things in perspective. I think we talked about this once. When we talk about risk, life is a riskful venture. When people say, "Oh, you don't care, you don't respect COVID," it's like, now having an appropriate response is intelligence. Okay, my daughter has COVID. Her roommate has COVID, who had it before my daughter, and her boyfriend, who lives with them, has COVID, and she's trashing her because she was going to come home for Christmas. Bear in mind, she just came home and came back and with COVID, and she is living in complete fear. And it's like, first of all, you can't get COVID again within 30 days. So what's your point? But she's just acting like a crazy woman. It's like, and then the people tried again, they love to parade themselves as being superior, morally superior in some way. So let's talk about risk, putting yourself in danger. What's the thing you're most likely to die of today? COVID? Hell no. The chances of dying of COVID are less than 1 in America, less than 1 in 1,100, less than that. So what's high? What are your chances of dying of heart disease? 1 in 6. Okay, 1 in 6. Chances of dying of cancer, 1 in 7. Okay, you're sitting inside, stationary, not exercising, afraid of COVID, so your heart can give out. Something much more dangerous. Seriously, it's like filling your house with rattlesnakes and then being afraid that the dog next door is going to bite you. I said that one for Diane. Okay, what next? President Trump said, he was worried about suicide, and they mocked him. You're 10 times more likely to die of suicide than COVID. 10 times more likely. These are actuary tables from the insurance companies. These aren't opinions, they're not politics. This is truth. This is actuary tables. Chances of dying in a car accident in your life, about 1 in 900. It's fairly high. Chances of dying in an airplane, people get in cars that don't get in airplanes, right? And yet your chances of dying in an airplane are 1 in 7,000. Airplane's 7 times safer than a car. Chances of dying by lightning, about 1 in 90,000. I'll take those odds any day. The point is, what are your odds of dying? They're 100%. Your odds of dying are 100%. Okay, so far, no one's come through that we know of. Outside of Jesus, right? I mean, that's, if you believe that, it's like no one's come through this. So if that's part of the path, so what we're really looking at is quality of life. I was looking at a picture of someone after I was talking to my agent today about pandemics and got into a conversation about iron lungs. Have you ever seen an iron lung? Does anyone know someone with an iron lung? I would much rather die than be in an iron lung. Seriously? Diane, your job before I go to iron lung is to bring me little cyanide capsules or something. No, that probably be painful. Just bring me a lot of morphine. Okay. No, really, to sit with your body in the iron lung with your head sticking out, that is not a life. So when we're looking at risk, the problem is we talk about the snowflake generation where all of a sudden everything's dangerous. I joke in the Michael Bay books that Austin's mom made him wear a helmet to the chess matches. Okay. It's like, there's danger everywhere. You know what? Life is dangerous. Life is just dangerous, and you will die. So the question is, how are you going to live? So when you look at risk, you start looking at risk. The problem is most of the things we're going to do that we're risking isn't really about death. It's really about our fear of failure. It's really about our fear of rejection, isn't it? We're really afraid of being rejected. So the real thing we need to attack actually is the fear of rejection. And then next we'll talk about the concept of what failure is. So the fear of taking risks, when Roosevelt said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, he was absolutely right. The greatest fear we have is fear itself. It's the greatest danger we have. So we need to examine this and especially look at it. And they say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? But then also say, who cares? If something within 24 hours of it happening, if I have a good chance of forgetting about it and not caring anymore, it's worth the risk. The truth is, usually things are painful for a couple hours and then we kind of move on. And yet they can be something that can keep us from decades of change and improvement. So is this the thing that's stopping you from your dreams, this fear of failure? Okay, the fear of risk. Okay, how do we deal with this? We examine the danger, and I put that in quotation marks. What is the real danger here? And we put it in perspective, and we get rid of this idea that we're going to live forever. Okay, throw that out. My buddy who wrote Your Erroneous Zones, Wayne Dyer, he said, look behind you. There's someone looking over your shoulder. It's your own death. You can fear this or you can use it for your own advantage. Think about that. Okay. All right. Number 5, the reason we don't hit our dreams, misunderstanding the nature of adversity. What happens, we're headed towards our dream, we make that step, and then we hit our first stumbling block and we stop. We don't understand that the stumbling block sometimes is exactly what we need. We hit a detour in the road. Well, the road we're on wasn't going to get us there. And the way Joseph said, that things start to fall together. When I start pursuing my biggest dreams, I had to go through huge changes, but I got good at swiveling. And I also got good at recognizing that I really don't know the entire path. And so sometimes things would happen that got me closer to where I needed to be. We don't succeed in spite of our challenges and adversity. In most cases, we succeed because of them. You know, my daughter finds after 2 years, gets into a doctor's school. It's really tough. She gets in there, takes her first test and fails it. The first response was, holy cow, I can't do this. I wasn't cut out for it. I'm not good enough. What it really was is, okay, you had to go through this now because you need to understand the level you're playing at. You're dealing with people's lives. You study hard. You now have to study on a higher level. You have to take it to the next level. And she did, and she excelled, and she got great grades. But it was test by test, and we suffered through every test. We would pray the night before the test, going to bed. The next morning, she'd call us at 6 a.m. from Texas and let us know if she passed it. We went through that. In fact, as you know, I flew out there to be with her, just to give her moral support. Okay. But failing that first test was probably the best thing that happened to her. You know, I turned the Christmas box into Deseret book. They rejected it. I turned it to signature book. They rejected it. Everyone I turned it to rejected it. That book never would have succeeded in a small publishing house. It needed to be self-published. It needed me to completely commit. The Christmas box house, things weren't working. They weren't working. I finally had to make the complete commitment and say, we'll give everything to get this built. That's what it took. I had to have failure after failure. If I had gone on the first day and someone handed me a $7,000 check, I would have thought, oh, this is going to be easy. Let me know when it's built. Okay? It's that adversity that wakes us up. It's not taking us away from our dreams. It's moving us towards our dreams in almost all cases. And just look at history. If you look at history, you'll see it. Some of these things that look like the biggest failures turn out to be the biggest successes. Sometimes God has to burn our lab down so we'll build the right lab, because we don't like change. We get stuck in our ways of doing things. That's why COVID is so valuable. I'm doing things with my career I never did before. I didn't have to. I didn't have to explore Zoom. I didn't have to explore online marketing as much. It was just like, now I'm totally into it. And most of the stuff that I used to do, I'm not going back to. Okay, I don't need to. It was a waste of time. I would have kept doing the same thing till the end of my days, probably. So burning down the lab was the best thing that could happen to me. When you go after your dreams, you will hit adversity. It's not because somebody's trying to stop you, it's because it's trying to move you into the right lane. So the true humility is understanding that you really don't know everything about what it's going to take to get there, or you would have already gotten there. I look back over the course I've been over the years, and I see God's hand. I see this amazing motion. And some of the most painful things I went through, I see why, I had to do that. That had to happen just the way it happened. It's amazing how grateful I am it happened. I wasn't grateful at the time. I was angry. I asked God, why have you deserted me? Okay. So this is one of the reasons people don't achieve their dream. They hit this little bump. Imagine if you're blind and you're walking along with a cane, and all of a sudden you hit a wall. Say, oh, I can't get through that. And what you don't realize is it's not a wall, it's just a bump in the carpet. You just have to step over it. Okay, that's the point, is you have to keep trying that adversity. What am I learning? Or is that block in front of me, obstacle, is that really a stepping stone to get me a little bit higher? Just like my daughter and her test. Okay, the last thing I want to share is an incongruent belief system. Okay, this is where the kingdom organizer, the 5 kingdoms, comes in really strong. If I say, I want to be rich and famous, okay, what does that mean? I want to be rich and famous. Do I? Is that really at the core? Is that what's going to bring me joy? Or am I really trying to say, I don't want to think I suck anymore? For me, that's more likely. Having struggled with feelings of self-worth growing up and being told I'm not of worth. I remember when I won junior class president, I remember thinking, looking at other people with anger and hate after I won. It's like, why aren't you excited? It's like, see, I told you I wasn't worthless. That was horrible. But I remember feeling that. I remember I ran for DECA president. And this is, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I'm going to tell it to you. I ran for DECA president. I had a DECA class. Remember DECA in school? It's kind of a business thing. And there was a girl in the class who her whole life was DECA. She had wanted, her parents were in DECA. She wanted to be DECA president. I ran against her because I thought I could win, and I did. And then after I won, it's like, oh crap, now I got the Big Mac, now I have to eat it. And I didn't go to my meetings, and finally they threw me out. And I said, well, I went back, I said, can't you just let Robin have it? She won. It's like, no, she lost. The vice president has to be it, because that's the way it is. So I denied a woman her dream because I was trying to feel good about myself. I went after something I didn't even want. This is where, I mean, I was pretty messed up, but that's what happens when you don't like yourself. That's what happens when you're told you're not worthy. When every time you, as a kid, you try to say you're worthy, you're smacked down. Okay, I didn't choose to be that way. It was forced on me. And eventually kids don't have the means to defend against that. I mean, you can pretty much convince a kid anything, from there's people walking around on the moon to the most outrageous religious beliefs. You can convince them anything. I mean, look, we believe in Santa, right? Flying around the entire world in a reindeer with reindeers, putting toys in a sled that will go to more than 7 billion people. It's absurd. We believe it. They'll believe anything. They'll also believe that you're not worth it. They'll also believe you're nothing. What's the difference? Is it harder to, what's more difficult to believe? That a fat man can fly around the world in one night with toys for 7 billion people pulled by flying reindeer, or you're not important? What's easier to believe? Think about that. And the truth is, the former or the latter is actually more absurd, that you're not important. That's more absurd, that you're not important. But no one can tell you that. But you have to deal with the idea that someone told you that somewhere along the line. And you need to free yourself from that. You don't have dreams because it's incongruent with your belief system. Well, throw it out. Dump it out. Throw out the bathwater. This is the time to do it. With 2021, just throw it all out. You have had so many lies in your life, and you've heard them, and you've seen them confirmed because you look for confirmation bias. Okay, you can't be anything. It comes over and over, and pretty soon you start acting that way, and it's confirmed. But when you do this, this is the cool thing. The most beautiful things are small. The most powerful moments are small. And following the 5 kingdoms, when you connect in that first and you strip down and you actually hear what your source is saying to you, and you pull off, you let him through, and you pull off all the crap that people put around you and say, but what do you think? And not what religion told you. What do you think? Because people have always been speaking for God, haven't they? God wants us all to drink the Kool-Aid, kill ourselves. People are always speaking for God. But you speak to God. You listen to that source and say, who am I? And all of a sudden, you don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to be proving your worth with an expensive car. You can walk with confidence, knowing that you're a light. That's the only way. The rest are just excuses. Everything else, it's an excuse, it's a fake, it's a forgery. You know, it's not fake it till you make it. You already made it. Faking is faking. You can't make God love you less, and you can't make him love you more. Can't do it. Okay? No more than my grandchildren can do it. And God's a little bit more advanced than I am. You're not great because you say you're great. And telling yourself every morning that you're great isn't going to make you more great. Okay? You are a value, period. Your soul is of incredible value. And I want to tell you something. You're going to have a lot of fun when you start stripping away and start ripping it off. It feels so good. And you start looking at all the little things that people said to you that made you feel down, and start pulling it away. And all of a sudden, you don't need it anymore. Someone asked me why. I mentioned I had a very expensive home, but that's when, I don't know how we did it. It just kind of grew. But for the first 10 years, we didn't have a big expensive home. And someone said, why don't you live in a mansion? And I said, I bought a mansion. I just gave it to kids. It's called the Christmas Box House. It's a $2 million mansion. And then we built another one. It's like, I didn't need it. And then I thought, I wanted cars. My brothers always told me cool guys had cool cars. And so I went and bought a car and then realized, got that out of my system. And I drove it for 11 years. And then my wife finally said, look, you have to get a new car. I said, why? It runs. It's like, don't you want a nice car? I go, it's nice. It runs. So it's like, wow, I didn't need that car to make me cool. I was liberated. The more we don't need, the more liberated we are. The most powerful times is when we just like ourselves. And the way we like ourselves is to understand who you are. Not that you earned it, you didn't. You can't earn your value. It's impossible. Can you be more valuable to society? Yes, you can. And that will bring you more joy. But you can't affect your own value. That you have an intrinsic worth that's unstoppable. And that's why, because of that, your dreams must not be contingent on worthiness or paradigm or fear. It's like, because you're worthy of the dreams. Because just because it's in your heart, the beauty of pursuing a dream is beauty. You know, if Jay Linda never got to Germany, the dream itself is of great worth. The studying, the looking at it, the what could be. The dreaming is powerful. And sometimes I think maybe the dreaming is better than the real thing. Maybe that's just part of it. Anyway, I hope this was a help for you tonight. Went over, but you know, we covered the 6 things. Discover which of these is you. Which of these is the reasons you're not getting the life, and then look at it and say, okay, so 2021 is going to be a different life for me. So thank you so much. Thanks for being in our community. I would really appreciate some of your epiphanies with the 5 kingdoms. Diane, did someone post my email? It's author@richardpaulevans.com. It's very simple. My name, author. I mean, that's not my name. That's what I do. author@richardpaulevans.com. And but I'd love to have stories for the book. So, but the book is coming out. It's moving ahead. I love you all. I hope you're having a really great season. Stay safe and well. And Michael, my friend, I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much for tonight, Richard. It's been a joy. We are so excited for the book deal. Congratulations. That is incredible. Mm-hmm. And of course, Hay House, you could not have a better partner in that. That's amazing. So be sure to tell Ben hi for us. Will do. And everybody, get your stories in. I know you've got them. I'm going to get you mine in the morning because I'm
including yours, Michael. Yeah, we got to have your story.
I'm exhausted.
You got a great story. You tomorrow? That's fine. Tomorrow's. Yeah. Tomorrow night is fine. Actually, it's late.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night's even fine, but just try not to forget. So.
Cool. So thank you so much for your time, and thank your family for us on our behalf for letting us have you for this hour. Everybody have a great week, and let's make some dreams happen.
Awesome.
Thank you, Rick.
Good night.
Night all.